This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. I don't know where everybody else is on this Deshaun Watson injury and what the specific timeline that they're going off of, because it feels like instead of going off of a team's timeline, we're going off of whatever the vibes are right now. The official timeline says that this injury happened way back in September, and it's a 4 to 6 week injury usually, which has been the exact terminology that's been said. They've never said it's a 4 to 6 week injury. We expect him to be healed in 4 to 6 weeks. When Deshaun Watson has said it specifically, he says, usually that's what I heard the timeline is. I don't know if that's going to be true in this case, because the body heals in all kinds of different ways. 4 to 6 weeks. Now, if you're counting, you would know that the Cardinals game would be 6 weeks from the Ravens game. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm going to pull up the schedule, the Browns schedule, just to double check that. But the end of the Titans game, my bad, that was on the 24th of September. So that's 1 week, that's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, Indianapolis, 5 weeks, Seattle. 6 weeks would be after the Cardinals game. So that's where the timeline has been with Deshaun Watson. Let me not get ahead of myself. Well, today we got interesting news on progress on that front. Now, I don't know what this means for this week. We might be in a similar situation, ironically enough, that the Cardinals are in with Kyler Murray, where he is approaching being back. He's at practice. He's practicing. He's approaching being back, but he's not 100% back yet. He's only like slightly probable for this week's game. And I think this is a similar situation for Deshaun Watson. Now, let's hear what the coach had to say, because the big news is that Deshaun Watson is going to practice today. He's going to practice. He's going to practice limited. Now, the last time he ended up playing, he did not practice on Wednesday. He sat out Wednesday, was limited Thursday, and was full Friday. So he's a whole day ahead of what he was Indianapolis week. So he'll be limited today. They will see how that goes. If he goes well, he might be full on Thursday, and he might be full again on Friday, and he might play, he might not. I think there's a number of interesting ways the Cleveland Browns can go about this, because the nature of this injury, you can't just rely on what you see specifically at practice, and I'll get into that in a minute. But let's hear what Kevin has had to say about this injury and how that's going to work out. We'll drop the clip.
Yeah, as you can imagine, I always just kind of keep it day to day, and we'll focus on today. He'll be out there, and we'll see how he does.
You're not making a quarterback decision today like you did last week?
Correct. I'm not making any game day decisions today.
What about who's number one full-time practice at quarterback today?
PJ remains the backup, yes.
Deshaun Watson can't go, so are you saying that PJ will be the starter this week if Deshaun can't play?
Correct.
In trying to avoid a repetition of the Indianapolis experience with Watson, have you changed the process at all as you evaluate the quarterback this week?
Yeah, I think every week's different. When you're working through an injury, every week is different, and how you feel day to day. So this week's just completely different in my perspective.
Reputation from Deshaun that the week off last week, focus on the rehab really helped that shoulder?
Yeah, I think it all helps. I think, like we mentioned, he's making progress. He's working through it, working very hard, both in this building, out of this building, really around the clock. So I think all of the time, all of the rehab continues to make, a difference. Okay.
Also, who didn't practice today? David Bell, knee injury, DeJuan Jones, shoulder, and then Greg Newsome, groin, Alex Wright, knee. So that's what we know about the injury status for this team. That's what we know about what the situation is with Deshaun Watson. Now, if you're asking me right now, do I think Deshaun Watson's going to play versus Arizona? I think that answer is complicated because he could play, but I don't think that means he's going to be who they plan for having the whole game. What do I mean by all of that craziness is I think that it's time to start thinking a little bit unconventional. I think the issue with the whole discussion about Deshaun Watson's shoulder and Deshaun Watson's injury has been because we have talked about it from a conventional perspective when this is an unconventional injury, right? This is an injury that usually happens with pitchers. This is an injury that is more, we know how to handle it in the context of baseball, but not in the context of football, right? The context of baseball, when you have a throwing shoulder injury, is that you work it back nice and slow, right? You do some time in AAA. You don't wait. You don't rush it. You wait like 2 months to even think about getting somebody back. And even if they do come back, they might be coming in and getting rehab in the bullpen before they're being asked to start again. That's how we look at these kind of injuries in baseball, where they happen more often. In football, these kind of injuries just don't happen that often. And the usual line for injuries on football is, hey, it doesn't hurt. If it doesn't hurt, you can play. But this is not one of those if it doesn't hurt, you can play injuries, because it affects your ability to throw, velocity, touch on the football, all of those things that Deshaun Watson, his people, and Kevin Stefanski have said that this injury is affecting. That makes it a little bit of a different beast when it comes to a quarterback and their throwing shoulder. So if we understand that this injury is a bit unconventional, then we need to treat the return from this injury as a bit unconventional. And this is not going to be stuff that people are going to be 100% comfortable with. This is not going to be stuff that people have seen before. And you're probably going to be criticized for being the first team to do it. But I think in the long run, you're going to be right about how to handle this type of injury. You can't just go off of practice, in my opinion, and make the determination if Deshaun Watson can play football with this injury. Practice is not sufficient enough to know if he's back. Regular practice is what I'm saying. It's not enough, right? Case in point being what happened against Indianapolis. He practiced fully. Everybody at the practice, media, team included, thought he looked great. Deshaun felt like he looked fine enough in that practice. And then you get to the game, and the first time he really tries to rip a ball, what happens? Throws an interception. It's underthrown. Second time he tries to rip a ball, almost throws an interception. It's underthrown. Why does this happen, right? How can you look good at practice, but then the game comes, you try to throw the ball for real, it doesn't come out? How does that happen? I'll tell you how I think it happens. Game adrenaline is different than practice adrenaline. If you're going 100% in practice, which you aren't, you're probably going 80 to 70% in practice. That's not the same as throwing a football with full adrenaline. If you have an acute shoulder injury, right, where the injury is about what you're able to do when you push that shoulder to its limit, like throwing a football really hard, you're not going to know if you don't stress test it in some way. And practice in its normal NFL structure does not create enough stress to have any idea of if that shoulder is ready to go on the game day. I think if you're the Cleveland Browns, you have two options. There's one that's going to be, at least on game day, a bit more conventional. And there's another option that if you get to game day, it's going to be very unconventional, very criticized, but it is 100% the most, you will find out most accurately if he's actually back or not. And you might have to do this again against Denver. So let's start with the unconventional approach, because I've talked about it enough. You guys can hear it now. What's the unconventional approach? All right, let's say you, for Deshaun Watson, treat this like a preseason game. I know it's a regular season, but you treat it like a preseason game. What I mean by that is you tell Deshaun Watson, hey, we're going to put you in for 2 to 3 drives, see how you look, and then after that, you're out. If you feel good, you're out. If you feel bad, you're out. Like, we're going to plan for PJ playing the bulk of this game, and we're going to have you play 2 to 3 drives. We're going to test you throwing to your right. We're going to test you throwing to your left. We're going to see how you react to a live rush and see if that arm can do everything it needs to do when you're asking it to do everything at the highest possible level. And the Arizona Cardinals are one of a few teams where you feel like you can get away with that and still win the game. You can't do that against Baltimore unless you're just ready to chalk that one up. And that can go more disastrous versus Baltimore because they're a much more dangerous football team. So you could do that. Now, that's going to make fans mad if you don't tell them the plan, especially. And let's be honest, the Browns would not tell you that's the plan. That's going to make the media landscape crazy. But you will know after that game, okay, Deshaun, how do you feel? You ripped it, throwing to your right, gained speed. You feel fine? Okay, you could play for the rest of the year. You're good. Okay, and Deshaun can know he's good for the rest of the year. You don't risk potentially making it worse. It's why after 2 to 3 drives, it's a wrap. He's done, right? No matter what, no matter how it looks, he's done. And you just kind of treat it like a preseason game. Again, not going to be the most popular approach week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. It will take a year before anybody gives you credit for that approach. But I do think that that's the most accurate way of knowing if he can be back. Because again, practice just doesn't provide you enough adrenaline. It doesn't provide you enough rare throwing windows to really know if the second that you start tugging on that shoulder 100%, that it's going to hold up. Because again, he went through practice last time, and the second he went full blow, like you would go in a game with that shoulder, things start to pop up. So that's one way of doing it, the unconventional way of doing it. There's another unconventional way of doing it that I think is more in line and more acceptable with what people would be willing to accept, but I don't think it's as good as just playing him for 2 or 3 drives. And that is basically on Friday, you haven't practiced today, you haven't practiced Thursday. If he's good after Thursday, on Friday, instead of practicing with the team, he has a pro day basically, right? You basically throw him like he's in a pro day. You give him a script of throws. I want to see you going left, hit this target. I want to see you going right, hit this target. I want to see you throw a deep ball. Basically, you put him through a pro day. Either way, I think what we learned from the Indianapolis Colts game in that situation is that they need to do a better job of finding a way to stress test this in a more controlled environment than just practice, because practice does not provide enough stress for you to know if that shoulder's going to hold up. He needs to go through some kind of a pro day. And I don't mean like you threw the ball 5-6 times in front of the trainer before practice. I mean, he does not practice that day because they're holding a pro day basically for him to see if he can hit all the throws he's used to hitting with the speed and velocity that he wants to. Can he go to his right, throw slightly left? Can he go to his left, throw slightly right? Can he do all of those throws with control? A full script of pro day throws. And honestly, if he gets through that, I wouldn't play him, right? If he gets through that, okay, cool. Let's give him a weekend of rest, and he's going to play for Baltimore. But they need some way of stress testing this. That is the thing that we're not talking about. We're so wrapped up in the conspiracy theories and the if he wants to play, if he doesn't want to play of it, that we're not thinking about how to functionally get him through this injury and to know if he can play through it. This is a way to figure it out. That's my suggestion. What I don't suggest is that you do the same thing you did against Indy and hope it goes well. What I don't suggest is that you decide, hey, we're just going to have him play against Arizona, but we're not going to allow him to throw anything above 15 yards. I don't suggest that, right? You want him to go out there and feel comfortable playing his game. And in order to do that, you just got to stress test him a little bit better than what they did, or stress test the injury a little bit better than what they did. You'll want to do it in a controlled environment. That's why I'm suggesting, hey, if the closest to a controlled environment in a NFL game that you can get is treating it like preseason for that player. You do it with other positions all the time, by the way, right? Where we have a wide receiver come back on a snap count, or an offensive lineman come back on a snap count, or a defensive player. We do this all the time for them. We just never seen it at the quarterback position. So while, again, it's unconventional for that spot, it's not an unconventional way of figuring out this injury for the sport, or even for sports in general. We see this in baseball all the time where pitchers come back, and this would be the equivalent of like a starting pitcher doing rehab in the bullpen, basically. This would be the equivalent of a basketball player on limited minutes, on a minutes restriction. Again, it's all normal for other sports to work yourself back like this, but for football at quarterback specifically, it's not. But I think we should normalize this. I think that that's a fair way to treat it. Now, again, they got to tell people this is what they're doing, but that's what I think the plan should be. One of those two options. But you can't go into this basically doing the same thing that you did against Indy and hoping that time is just going to give you a better result. You got to stress test this injury to some point. So that's Deshaun Watson's situation. That's what I think the Browns should do. Right now, it's PJ Walker until they say it's Deshaun, but Deshaun is practicing. And it is a good sign that he's practicing on Wednesday, because last time he tried to play, he only practiced Thursday, Friday. So we'll see where he's at the end of the week. That's my 2 cents on this thing. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night.